Last weekend, I took my Grey Knights to LVO 2022. I want to go ahead and run you through everything I learned, all of my matchups, my list, the whole 9 yards, and even how at my first Super Major ever, I earned a yellow card. I'd like to start by thanking all of the staff at Frontline Gaming for how hard that they worked all weekend to make sure that we could go ahead and be giant nerds and play our war game that we love so much. I'd also like to thank Norm for coming out with me and going ahead, and he ran in the friendly tournament with his NIDs, and I was left to drown in the deep end of the competitive tournament. It's weird interviewing myself. I brought a patrol, Prescient Brethren, with a spearhead of sword bearers. This should confuse nobody. It is the last ride of my 5 Dread Knight list. Starting out, I have a Brotherhood Tech Marine with warp shaping, and he had divination. So usually, if I didn't have to change the tides, I would just have him go ahead and do it for me. Otherwise, he was trying to get me back a CP every turn. My other Tech Marine, who was in the Sword Bearers detachment, ran Sanctuary. He was constantly buffing up interceptors before they'd fling themselves up the board. My Warlord was a Grandmaster and a Nemesis Dread Knight. Surprise. I color-coded everything, so either they had the Dread Knights were red or blue to correspond with either Prescient Brethren for blue or red for Sword Bearers, or I bought squad marks and I put the corresponding color on their actual bases, so there was no confusing what was up here. The Grandmaster and the Nemesis Dread Knight, my Warlord, had Demon Slayer and Hammer of Righteousness for their 2 Warlord traits, so +1 to wound, and in combat. And then, of course, Demon Slayer brings him from 6 attacks base to 7 or 14 with the sweep. It's very good. And then if you ever run into demons, spoiler, I did, they don't get their invul against your attacks. The powers I picked were a Vortex of Doom and Empiric Amplification on him. My other character was another Grandmaster and a Nemesis Dread Knight. He had Gate of Infinity, Empiric Amplification. That is a little bit of backup in case the other one or the other Grandmasters get popped. I can still put the +1 damage power. He also had the Gem of Enoctu for +2 to cast those powers. So if I really had to, and this came up a couple times, I would rush him forward. I would spend 1 CP to have him cast twice, 1 CP to have him cast on 3d6, 1 CP to increase his range, and then I could pop the gem for +2 to cast, which this came in handy in a number of my matches, and it effectively made it so I could not fail those casts. The odds were super low, and then if they went off at a high level, then they were effectively undeniable. Very good. He also brought with him the Nemesis Demon Great Hammer, and of course both of my Grandmasters have the Silencer and the Psi Cannon. Moving on to my troops, I have only 1 squad of OPSEC in the whole list, and that would be 1 strike squad with swords. I think swords are great because of Hammer Hand. You're always rerolling wounds, so the lower strength on the swords doesn't matter quite as much versus, say, the Interceptors, who really need that strength 6 halberd. I then had Servitors in this. I took them in the elite slots. You can take 1 in a no 4-sword slot for every Tech Marine you bring. I didn't. Fast attacks, of course. I have a total of 3 squads of Interceptors for 25 of them total. In every single game, I combat squatted them into 5-mans. That goes ahead and wraps up the Prescient Brethren, and then I move on to the Sword Bearers, and none of this should surprise anybody as well. I had another squad of Servitors for a total of 3. They are my action monkeys. They go out there and they raise banners, or they do rod, or whatever else. Heavy support here, I have 3 more Dread Knights. So like I said earlier, this is my last hurrah with the 5 Dread Knight list. So there you go, that's my list. Now, how did I prepare? Preparation for this was a little dicey because it was right on the tail end of the holidays. I had an RTT plan, but it was canceled. So what I had to do is run multiple games against my friends. I ran against Ultramarines, I ran against Iron Hands, I ran against Imperial Knights. I do not have any friends who play Custodes. My friends who play Drakari wasn't available, and I didn't get any reps into Crusher Stampede. So I knew Thick City was gonna be out there, I knew Crusher Stampede was gonna be out there, and I knew Custodes were gonna be out there, all of those in force. Fortunately, I got no reps into any of them. Matchups. Here we go. So my first match was against Tau. It was the retrieval mission. I took Banner, Stranglehold, and Purifying Ritual. I put 2 5-mans of Interceptors into Deep Strike. He took Banners to the last and Engage. His list was a Riptide, of course, 10-man Crisis Suit, a couple of Devilfish, multiple squads of Breachers, 2 Remoras, which I had never seen before, and some Kroot and Kroot Hounds. He was a very nice guy. His name was Scott. He was very organized. I was not. He came with all the terrain layout and rules and a booklet and everything, so thank you, Scott, for actually being prepared for this tournament. When it came to how we went ahead and put out our terrain, as you can see in this photo here, he placed his terrain in a weird setup where he was basically in a U, and he didn't have enough obscuring terrain to stay away from my Dread Knights, so he ended up placing his Crisis Suits right in the middle in a huge piece of terrain that was all dense cover. So -1 to be hit. I knew that I had to take that unit out. I either had to kill the Riptide or the Crisis Suits very, very quickly. The Crisis Suits had 18-inch out of line of sight infantry shredding grenade launchers, so I really needed to kill them. I think first I was worried more about losing my Interceptors than I was about losing a Dread Knight or two. So I made it my mission to go ahead and wipe those things off of the table. I won the roll-off for turn 1. I moved up all of my Dread Knights. I had to shunt one to get an angle on the Crisis team. I went ahead and did that wombo combo that I talked about, where spent all the CP, got off the +1 to wound and the +1 to damage strats. I got off powers. I got off a very good Vortex of Doom, which ended up, because the 10-man Crisis unit is so big, it ended up hitting 1 unit of drones and Farsight as well, which did extra damage. That was nice. And then I moved up all of my Interceptors right behind that middle terrain there, so that on turn 2 they could leap forward and be obnoxious. My opponent did a very good job of using his Crisis Suit Sergeant, whatever they're called. It had some relic or upgrade that allowed it to ignore AP 1 and 2. He tanked a lot of my shots with drones and that Sergeant, but once that Sergeant fell, the unit started to kind of fall apart. And after most of my Dread Knights had all fired at it, they were all dead, leaving actually Farsight exposed. He took a few shots from a Dread Knight and was reduced down to 2 wounds. That was the end of turn 1. I did not charge of my turn 1. And I knew that I had wiped out about a quarter of his army. My opponent knew he was heavily on the back foot now. And so as we moved into his turn 1, he did an excellent job of screening me out from the backfield. He moved up with the Devilfish to move block me. He dropped Breachers out of them first so that they came up and grabbed all the objectives. He shot one of the Remoras up into my backfield and scored Engage. He was able to get up some banners as well, 3 of them if I remember right. I also got up 3 that turn. Then came the Tau shooting phase, which, as we all know, well, more so now than then, but it's a scary place to be. So he whiffed almost all of his marker lights. The Riptide was only in range because he had placed it so far back. He was afraid of the Dread Knights. He had deployed it very far back in his backfield. So the Riptide was only in range to fire at one of my Dread Knights, which it did. I made most of the saves, so he was only reduced think he was reduced quite a bit, but I didn't lose a single Dread Knight that round. And that was really it. He didn't charge. He didn't do any of that. I took a couple pot shots from some Kroot who were in some cover next to one of the objectives, but otherwise that was his whole round. I think being down his crisis suits was huge. I believe that they were the absolute linchpin of his entire army. So there you go. Turn 2, I moved up my interceptors. I was very aggressive with them. They were on both of the No Man's Land objectives by the end of turn 2. They cast Purifying Ritual and shot and did all that good stuff. Then my Dread Knights focused on the Riptide. I believe I got it down to its bottom bracket, if I remember right. And then we charged and killed the Devilfish up top that was move blocking me. My Tech Brains and some of the interceptors and the strike squad took pot shots at the Remora that was in the backfield but didn't bring it down. And then his turn 2, he goes ahead and moves his second Remora up, so now he gets 3 for engage. He's down to 1 objective though. 2 of his banners are now down. He takes some shots with the Riptide, manages to kill the wounded Dread Knight. He takes some shots with the Breachers, kills some of my... I think he wipes out a whole squad of interceptors. That was about it for his turn 2. My turn 3, I killed one of the Remoras with the stuff in my backfield. I raised 2 more banners. I killed basically everything that wasn't the last Devilfish, Farsight himself, and I think 1 unit of Breachers. His turn 3, he manages to take back 1 objective. Just leaving servitors on it, but he had Breachers, so he has Obsec, so he wins. And that was about all he had left. He called it after turn 3. He said he wanted to play out turn 4 and see what would happen, but then on my turn 4, I tabled him. So turn 4 didn't go anywhere. Scott was a great guy. He's a very gracious opponent. He's cracking jokes. You know, we were both saying that, yeah, I know this is a one-sided game this time, but wait for the new Tau Codex. I bet you it swings the other way. We went ahead and tallied up my points and talked out turn 5, and I scored my first perfect game ever, and he scored 30. So that was round 1. Now that's a great round 1 and all, but I just scored a perfect game at the Super Bowl of 40K tournaments. That means that I am now in the pool with everybody else that scored super high. And who scored super high? All the really well-known players there. So I got matched up against a Art of War player, Alex MacDougal, with his Forces of the Hive Mind list, so soup of Nids and the new Gene Stealer cults. Now Alex was an amazing guy. He was super great. He was very happy-go-lucky. He gave me some take backsies, played by intent. Very nice guy. He even gave me some pointers during and after the game that I've taken to heart, and I will go ahead and talk to you about here. I did not know what the new Gene Stealer cults could really do. I had never played them before, and obviously Alex is a much higher caliber of player than I am, so you can imagine how this one went. The mission was Scorched Earth. I took Purifying Ritual, Raised Banners, and Stranglehold. I put 2 units of interceptors into Deep Strike. He took Rod, Engage, and To the Last. He had a very good list, like I said. His list contained 2 28-man units of Devil Gaunts. They might have been 30-mans. I think they were 28s. 1 12-man of Gene Stealers, 6-man Hive Guard unit, some of the new Jackals, well, not new. I mean, I guess they're new because of the new Codex, but anyway, and then a whole bunch of stuff I never got to interact with because it was hidden. He had a Neurothrope as his warlord, and then he had some other big bug. I can never remember the name of all the Nid bugs. Anyway, I never got near them. Looking back after everything, I lost this game at deployment. I deployed very badly. Here's a photo of the deployment, and then later on he gave me the advice that because he has very little anti-tank in this army, really he just has the Hive Guard and the massive amounts of shots from the buffed up Devil Gaunts, that I should have actually screened my infantry with my Dread Knights instead of hiding my Dread Knights, which is what I had done. because the Gene Stealers are very good. They're better now than they've ever been, but 12 of them are going to struggle to take down a Dread Knight. Possible, but unlikely. Instead, what happened is he won turn 1. He shoves his Gene Stealers up. Scorched Earth is a long edge deployment, so there's not a lot of space between our deployment zones. He was right in my grill turn 1, and he destroyed servitors and a unit of interceptors down to 1 man, which was actually really important because what GSC has now is a new stratagem that if they are no longer within engagement range of an enemy unit, they can spend some CP. It might be 1, might be 2, and he can go ahead and grab that whole unit and put it back into ambush, which is their version of deep strike. So leaving 1 alive was actually a big deal because that meant I could pick up that whole Gene Stealer unit on my next turn, which is what I did. I took some shots into a Dread Knight from some Hive Guard. I don't remember it doing a whole lot. And then he used the Jackal's pregame moves to go ahead and move block me from getting to some of the objectives. It was a very interesting game to go ahead and look and see how he played because, as I said, he's a much better player than I am. In fact, he took 4th for the whole weekend. So, yeah, very good player. My turn 1, I got up a single banner. I killed that Gene Stealer Cole unit, and then I had one of the most hilariously awful psychic phases I've ever had in my entire time playing this game, which you can't help but laugh at because it was just awful. I managed to get Purifying Ritual off for a single point. He managed to shoot one of the units of bikers. Then I shot some of his gaunts, killed a few, and that was it. I had nothing in range to charge, so his turn 2 was a big one. He moves up with some of the gaunts and his jackals. He moves blocks me with the jackals. He buffs the Hive Guard and the gaunts up to some ungodly level. I lost 2 Dread Knights that round and another unit of interceptors. Now I'm really on the back foot and I gotta make something happen. He charges me with the jackals into my non-warlord Grandmaster Dread Knight, and he goes ahead and ties them up. On my swing back, I only kill 3 out of the 4 of them, or it wasn't 4 out of the 5 of them. Anyway, 1 was left, which was perfect, exactly what he wanted, because that effectively tar pitted me for the next turn. I had to either fall back or use the strat to fall back and shoot and charge. Anyway, it was great. It was exactly what he needed. So I'm stuck in my little corner back there. My turn 2, I managed to snag a 2nd and a 3rd objective and shoot him off of another one, which actually gained me Stranglehold for the turn. It's the only time I get Stranglehold in this whole game. I shot more of the Gaunt unit that I already whittled down, and at the end of this turn is when I actually realized that was a mistake. So, kind of like when you're fighting AdMech and they're buffed up Ranger units, like 2 squads of 5 Rangers are less dangerous than 1 squad of 20 because you can pummel on so many buffs, right? So what happened is once I had shot the Gaunt unit down to a small number, he just shifted all the buffs to the other Gaunt unit, which managed to shred the hell out of me and take out another Dread Knight by themselves, because, you know, 90 shots, you're going to eventually kill your saves. His turn 3, he manages to kill all but 1 of my Dread Knights. He would not shoot the one that can jump away. I saw this in pretty much every game. No one would interact with the Grandmaster that can actually jump away, which is hilarious. His turn 3, he kills all but 1 Dread Knight. It's my Warlord Grandmaster. He won't touch it because I can jump away, so why would he? He kills, I think the only thing I had left was a strike squad and maybe 1 unit of interceptors, maybe a unit of servitors. I managed to move everybody up, score 4 for Purifying Ritual, and then I called it after that because he still had most of everything, and he was in an excellent position. So I conceded, my opponent graciously accepted. We talked out turn 4 and 5. And the score was 95 to 51. So not as bad as it could have been, but not as good either. We talked after the game about the deployment shenanigans and then also my target priority problems. He said most of my target priority was good except for whittling down the one Gaunt squad too much and focusing on that. So excellent feedback. Thank you very much, Alex. I don't know if you'll ever watch this, but if you do, you were awesome. And if anybody fights him in the future at any events, he is a stand-up guy. And I should probably thank him for going ahead and making this a fast game so I could go get lunch, because I was pretty hungry. My third and final match of day one was against Khorne Daemons, and what more iconic matchup can you think of than Grey Knights versus Demons? So I was really looking forward to this, even though I never played this army before. This mission was on Vital Intelligence. I picked Rod, Purifying Ground, and Grind Them Down. I did not pick the Demon Kill because he didn't have a lot of Demon vehicles. He had no Demon Primarchs, and actually quite few units, and I'll explain why here in a moment. He picked Engage, Abhor the Witch, and Rod. I'm sorry I don't have any photos of the deployment for this one. I just simply forgot. So he didn't have a lot of units because he brought 2 Lords of Skulls. Yeah, he started with 4 CP, if I remember right. So 2 units ended up being almost or just over 1,000 points of his army. A real tilt list, kind of. He had a bunch of chaff, including Bloodletters and Furies, and then he had 2 Bloodthirsters, 1 Wrath and 1 Rage, something like that. I don't actually know demons that well, which is a shame because I'm a Grey Knights player, right? Our match started off a little rough, personally. Like, even before any dice were rolled, it was late, we were tired. The third match of the day, we've already played 6 hours of Warhammer, and we're going into our, possibly what could be another 3 hours. Turns out what happened is it's loud in that hall. We were tired. Like I said, my opponent was hard of hearing, and I have a stutter. So it was just like a coagulating maelstrom of difficulties that made for some misunderstandings at first, but we went ahead and we pushed through. We got over it, and we went and we had a great game. So here's what happened. He wins the roll-off. He pushes forward with basically everything. It's vital intel, so the deployment zones are actually only like 24 inches apart at max. So he rolls forward. Using one of the Lords of Skulls, he manages to pick off one squad of interceptors that I'd left out in the open by accident, so he could see them. Whoops. I gave him 2 points right there for Abhor the Witch. He did an excellent job spreading out at his backfield to go ahead and stop me from doing any deep strike shenanigans, and with all the Furies and the Hounds and stuff, he was so fast. He could go ahead and he grabbed almost every objective on turn 1, except my own, of course. But that was it. His other Lord of Skulls fires into one of my Dread Knights and damages it a little bit, but didn't kill anything. The only thing I lost was that one squad of Interceptors, which, knowing what I know now, I should have either put it into Deep Strike along with my other 2 units I had in Deep Strike, or I could have hidden them better. There was a lot of obscuring terrain, and I just didn't take advantage of it. Turn 1 was massive, and I'm going to obviously explain how. So, turn 1, I move up. I get my Dread Knight castle, so I have one Dread Knight kind of go north up the board along with my Warlord Grandmaster Dread Knight, and then I have my 2 other Swordbearer Dread Knights and the Grandmaster, the Swordbearer Grandmaster, rolling along the bottom towards one of the Lord of Skulls. I popped Tide of Banishment. I stayed there the whole time, because who knew that army-wide reroll 1s to hit and 1s to wound is just amazing. Turns out it's amazing. The psychic phase happens. I get 4 points for Purifying Ritual. I do the old Wombo combo again. 1 CP for 3d6 to cast. You pop the Gem of Intoku. 1 CP to cast another power. Go ahead and I get off the +1 damage plus 1 to wound onto one of the Lord of Skulls. In the I think I then smited it, then proceed to murderize a Lord of Skulls in my shooting with 3 Dread Knights. I rolled hot, but honestly, the Tech Marines giving the 2 non-Grandmasters down there with the Grandmaster plus 1 to hit, and then all 3 of them are getting reroll 1s to hit. They're getting reroll 1s to wound. I think on the Grandmaster I ended up popping Psychic Onslaught to get even more AP, so I was only like I was pumping him down to his invuls for almost everything. Everything that I got through was either 3 damage or 2 damage, and it evaporated. I killed it almost immediately, and when I killed it, he said that his brother plays Grey Knights, and they play a lot, and he was actually very surprised to see 3 Dread Knights take down a Lord of Skulls. And he used a strat to give him a 5-up Feel No Pain. He did all that stuff, and it didn't matter. Like, I was doing so much efficient damage with all those rerolls and those plus 1s to hit, and then, you know, reroll. Yeah, it's crazy. On the other side of the board, if I remember right, like, I knew the Lord of Skulls got more dangerous the more damage it took, like, in combat. So up north, where there was the other Dread Knight and my Grandmaster Dread Knight, Vortex of Doom onto it, did a little bit of damage, and then I did a little bit of shooting. But the best part is in the charge phase, my Grandmaster, my Warlord Grandmaster, so he has Demon Slayer, which is about to come in handy. He has Hammer of Righteousness. You know, he's rerolling 1s to hit, he's rerolling 1s to wound, he's hitting on 2s, he's wounding on 2s. I go in there, charge, got my 7 attacks, hit them all, wound them all. He fails like every save. I do 30 damage. He was saving on 6s, and they all went through, if I remember right, or 6 of the 7 went through, and I did 30 damage. So in 1 turn, I killed 2 Lords of Skulls, which was just over 1,000 points of his list. It was super fucking epic. Just, those rerolls are so efficient. He'd already been hurt a bunch, so even if I rolled less hot on damage, I still would have killed it. And my opponent just looks at me like, I've never seen that happen for sure. Like, I've never ever seen 2 Lord of Skulls die in 1 turn. And I'm just like, well, here I am. But it was super epic. At this time, I call out to, or right before this, I see Stefan from One Last Blade. I call over to him. He comes running over. He's looking down the game, and he's just stoked because, you know, it's Grey Knights versus Demons. Like, it's so iconic. It's so awesome. So turn 2, he moves up and continues to take objectives. He's getting board control. He's still screening me out. He's doing very well. He pulls up a he brings both Bloodthirsters and charges my Grandmaster, the Warlord that just effectively soloed that Lord of Skulls. He gets charged by 2 Bloodthirsters. Picture here, by the way, very epic. On the other side of the board, he moved up with a bunch of Blood Letters, not Bloodthirsters. There's a lot of blood in Khorne armies, if you are surprised by that. He charges into my Dread Knight castle that's down there. I knew that a 20-man Bloodletter had +1 to hit in combat, and I knew that if I could kill 1 in Overwatch, that those all drop back down to 3s to hit. So I spend a CP, shoot Overwatch from a Dread Knight, you know, hitting on 6s, 18 shots, only need 1 to get through, none of them get through. I don't even think I think it was like 2 or 3 wound or hit, and like none of them wounded or something, or he made saves. Anyway, nothing dies. He gets in there with a 20-man unit. On the other side, my Grandmaster is charged by 2 Bloodthirsters. He swings in the fight phase into my Grandmaster Dread Knight. I managed to make a whole bunch of saves. I'm up on like my 2nd bracket, and here's where I made a really big mistake. So if you look back at this photo, these 2 demons look the same to me. They're Bloodthirsters. I think they're the same model. I don't see any difference between them personally. And I misunderstood him when he said which one was swinging at me. So I point at the one I think hadn't swung yet. I interrupt, and I do like 16 damage. But that Bloodthirster has the upgrade, the Exalted upgrade, where it can only take 8 damage a phase. And because of the other shooting and stuff, it's got 1 left now. So it takes its 8. I had done enough damage that if I had swung at the correct one, I would have actually killed it. The Grandmaster would have killed a Lord of Skulls and then a Bloodthirster in 2 rounds of combat, which would have been even more epic. But I targeted the wrong thing, and the other Bloodthirster swings into my Grandmaster and kills him. Rip. I also forgot, I always forget this. I especially forget this with my Dread Knights. I could have spent 2 CP to have him fight on death, and I probably could have at least really super crazily wounded that Bloodthirst that killed him. Down below with the Dread Knight, Khalsu's got a bunch of blood letters, you know, on my Dread Knights now. He swings into one of them with everything. Does not manage to kill another one, but he really wounds it. I swing back. I'm swiping. I kill a bunch, but there's still a bunch left up. My turn 2, I scored 0 for primary, but I know that I'm in such an advantageous position right now that even with my mess up, I wasn't too perturbed, and I knew I had the upper hand. So I flooded the midboard with my interceptors. I get on a bunch of objectives. I managed to score 6 for Purifying Ritual. Bloodletters on my DKs all get chopped up or shot or smoked. And they all die. I rot in my corner with some servitors, and I move up the Dread Knight that had gone like due north, and I move him over to where the 2 Bloodthirsters are. He smites 1, kills it because it only had 1 wound left. My opponent then spends 2 CP for the stratagem Demonic Incursion to go ahead and bring back his Bloodthirster at full power on his next movement phase. I don't know why he did not use this stratagem on one of the Lord of Skulls. It's not an army I know, so I don't know if there's anything stopping him from doing that. I don't know if there's a keyword mess up there. I know the Lord of Skulls comes from Chaos Space Marines, and the Bloodthirsters come from Chaos Demons. I don't know if there's some interaction there that isn't possible, but the way it's written, it looks like he could have brought back a Lord of Skulls, but he didn't. He brought back a Bloodthirster. So that same Dread Knight that smote and killed the 1 Bloodthirster lays into the remaining one with his guns, does a bunch of damage. Then I go to charge and fail. And it's like a 5-inch charge. Then I reroll it, fail again. Shit happens. I laugh. It's not what I wanted, but whatever. So that's the end of my turn 2. I score grind them down because I killed the Bloodletters and the Bloodthirster, and he had only killed my Grandmaster. Turn 3, he goes. He doesn't have a whole lot left. He has 1 really heavily wounded Bloodthirster, 1 fresh Bloodthirster, and I think he only has another unit of Bloodletters and maybe 1 unit of Khorne Hounds left. It's not very much. He drops the newly minted Bloodthirster up top again where it was previously slain, and he has a 9-inch charge because it's a deep strike. He charges, I believe he charged with the new Bloodthirster and didn't get the charge off, and then he tries to, and he had like no CP left, so he couldn't re-roll it, and he charges in with the wounded Bloodthirster and bounces off my Dread Knight, so he's holding firm up north. I think he did a couple damage, but not a lot. I know that Dread Knight was still on his top bracket. My turn 3, I've only lost 3 units total. I've lost 2 Dread Knights and an Interceptor squad, so I am sitting pretty. I'm all over the board everywhere I want. I'm shunting where I want. I'm charging what I want. Shooting what I want. I'm smiting what I want. I max out Purifying Ritual. And by the end of the turn, I had killed everything except his fresh Bloodthirster, which he didn't have the CP to bring back another one. And then I had killed everything but, like, I think maybe a unit of Hounds, or there were like 4 or 5 Bloodthirsters or Bloodletters left. And then that is when my opponent conceded. I was pretty tired, so I'm not remembering the end of this all that well. And we talked it out. We talked out turns 4 and 5, and the score was 81-40. Grey Knights win against Demons. Thus ended my first official day at the LVO, so I am now 2-1, which is exactly where I wanted. So now I know that I've already met my goal. So my goal was to go 2 and 4. So I've already met my goal for wins. So if I spend the next day just losing, I was very happy at this point. I go out and get some drinks. I go out with Blake Law, Cannon Biggs, Nick Nanavati. We go out and we get some fajitas, some Mexican food, and some booze. Also Hunter, who had Best in Faction Space Wolves 2 years in a row now. After this, I had a great time, bunch of great dudes, good jokes, good beer, good food. Hunter and his girlfriend and I all decided that we were going to retire a little early and try to get our nappy naps in. So Norm, myself, Hunter, and his girlfriend retired early. I think I was in bed by like 10:30, which was good because this I didn't know it, but day 2 I wasn't going to eat until dinner. I just didn't have time, but we'll get into day 2 in a minute. So the next morning, I already know I'm paired up against a man named Josh. I know that he's running Iron Hands. I don't know anything about Iron Hands, not specifically. Shower, grab my army, go down there, start laying out my army, introduce myself to who seems to be a very nice guy, and a judge walks by and says, "Hey, are you Rick Redu?" And I said, yes, I am. And he says, "Can you show me on your list where you have Demon Slayer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, no problem." And so I grab my phone, I pull up the BCP app, and I pull up my list, and I start looking through it, and I shit a brick because I had submitted the wrong list. Not terribly different list, but the previous list that I played all of day 1 was the one I had practiced with. I had run against my friends. I had like reps and reps and reps in on that list, but the one that I actually submitted was this list. So there's not a lot of difference. All the units are exactly the same. It's still a spearhead and a patrol. It's still Prescient Brethren and sword bearers. It's not like it's a vastly different all infantry list or whatever. The only difference is a little bit of warlord traits and some psychic powers. Both of those are no good. So here's the thing. The difference is the one that I was supposed to be using, the one that I had actually submitted, the blue Grandmaster did not have Demon Slayer, and he was not my warlord. Instead, I had used the warlord trait to give divination to my Tech Marine, and I had given a warlord trait to my Grandmaster and a warlord trait to my other Grandmaster. So I was only supposed to have Hammer of Righteousness, not also have Demon Slayer. And then my other Grandmaster had the Unyielding Anvil Obsec aura, which in my playtesting, I had found I was running the Dread Knights as a big castle, and they were in the way of everything, and the Unyielding Anvil, like either everybody died and it didn't matter, and I was holding things anyway, or I forgot it was there or whatever. So I stopped using Unyielding Anvil a long time ago. I think that it'll be a lot more useful in the 2022 chapter approved, because having obsec means that you complete your actions like immediately and not on the next turn. So I'll be running Unyielding Anvil again. But the other big thing is, you'll see here on this second Grandmaster, he has Empiric Amplification and Vortex of Doom and doesn't have Gate of Infinity. So I have a list, a Grey Knights list, without Gate of Infinity. So Judge, very, very like nice guy, and I'm very apologetic. I was not cheating on purpose. He didn't think I was. He says he has to give me a yellow card, which is absolutely warranted and completely true. If you look at the code of conduct, it straight up says if you swap out warlord traits or psychic powers, whether accidentally or not, that is a foul, and a foul results in a yellow card. So here I am on my second tournament ever as a new player, and I get a yellow card. So let this be a lesson to you. If you're listening, go ahead and double check, triple check, quadruple check your lists. Make sure that you're actually submitting the one that you're practicing with, because if you're anything like me, you play with so many lists all the time, they all get jumbled in your head, and whoops. Luckily, I wasn't ever going to be at the top tables. I'm almost exactly middle of the pack from the placements. He said it's not a big deal, just play with the list that you submitted from here on out. So I did, because that's what you're supposed to do. My previous opponent had gone back and looked at my list, and he had not seen Demon Slayer on it, and went ahead and reported me to the judge. I have since reached out to him and spoken to him via Facebook, and I let him know that, hey, it was a mistake. I actively tried to seek him out Saturday evening. I actively tried to seek him out throughout the whole tournament and apologize. I wanted him to know that it was just a brain fart. It wasn't anything intentional. He accepted my apology. He said that he knew that I probably wasn't cheating on purpose, but he reported it to the judge because he did not feel comfortable confronting me himself. Good thing, actually, that I was told, because a yellow card doesn't really mean anything by itself. You don't get a red card and disqualified until you effectively earn 3 yellow cards in one event. They don't last a whole season or anything, they just last for that event. I wasn't going to get another card, you know, probably won't get another one after this. So I was actually thankful, because at least now I'm not cheating, I'm playing with the list I'm supposed to be playing with. With all that drama out of the way, Josh and I sat down to our game. We are playing Surround and Destroy. I took Banner, Stranglehold, and Purifying Ritual. I had 2 units of Interceptors and Deep Strike. And then he took Abhor the Witch, Stranglehold, and Oaths of Moment. Explains his list to me. It's got that crazy Iron Hands character, Contemptor Dreadnought. It has 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts. It has 2 Landspeeder Storms. One of them had scouts in it. It has some infiltrators. It's got company veterans for bodyguard. Yes, he's going to bodyguard the character Dreadnought. It has a bunch of Vanguard veterans, which were the real melee threat in the list, a lieutenant, a tech marine, and some eliminators. He also has a drop pod with 2 units of devastators in it, so he has grav guns and multi-meltas. So he set up. I absolutely do not want first turn, but I win it anyway. And so I was then way too aggressive. I should have stayed back, played really cagey, moved up 1 unit of interceptors to trade for 3 points for Stranglehold, and instead I tried to like move out and do too much, and I paid for it. So his turn 1 comes, he moves up some Vanguard veterans, he's able to get within immediate charge, like I think 3-inch charge on my interceptors on the right objective. He then drops down a drop pod on the right side. He absolutely murders the servitors and the strike squad and the Dread Knight that are holding that point. So that leaves me with absolutely nothing over there that can actually hold the objective. He then charges, wipes out my interceptors, gets his Stranglehold, gets his Oaths of Moment with a Form Speeder and some Eliminators. And that's the end of turn 1. Turn 2, I then move up, I retake the points. I think one of his Vanguard veterans lives, which is too bad. Now that I've lost my right flank, I only gain 5 on primary, not 10. I have to shunt over my blue Grandmaster Dread Knight. He then proceeds to completely obliterate both of the Devastator squads that were dropped with psychic powers and shooting. He then charged the drop pod to go ahead and pile in and consolidate closer to his side of the board. On my left side, my Dread Knight castle moves up. There's almost nothing to shoot. I move up some interceptors towards the middle. I killed the eliminators in the middle of the board, and I can't get my infiltrators up in range yet. That's the end of my turn 2. His turn 2, he kills one of my other Dread Knights or severely wounds it. I can't remember which. He then starts to move units away. He starts to like pivot away from where my Grandmaster is coming because he's afraid of it. He says he just straight up is not going to shoot it. He's not going to engage with it. He's not going to let me get a charge off, which I respect. The whole time, by the way, Josh is an absolute gentleman. He's a great opponent. We then trade more Vanguard veterans for more interceptors. My last unit of interceptors gets a charge off after what's left of the eliminators and kills them. And then we go on to turn 3. Turn 3, and this whole time his character Dreadnought is standing out in the open, but because he has 2 company veterans behind the wall that I can't interact with, they're bodyguarding the Dreadnought, so I can't shoot it, I can't interact with it. Looking back, what I should have done is I should have been more aggressive. I should have like either used interceptors or a Dread Knight and like rushed after that Dreadnought. I did not. At the very least, I should have made a move, but I didn't. So I just kind of slowly fed him my Dread Knights. I shot some stuff, killed some stuff. Vanguard veterans died. We keep trading for stranglehold. Get off some shots on one of his Redemptors. I don't hurt it very much. I then try to charge it. I fail that charge, even though it was only like a 6-inch charge. It was pretty funny. And then on the next turn, so his turn 3, he shoots at one of my Dread Knights, I think kills it, and then charges the remaining one with the Redemptor and kills it. We've traded back and forth. There's not a whole lot to say to the intricacies of this game because he played so well on turn 1. He knocked me on my ass on the back foot. I'm trying to claw forward. My Grandmaster Dread Knight, the blue one, is luckily like holding the right flank all by himself, but that's mainly just because he doesn't want to interact with it at all. To make a long story short, Josh proceeds to pound me into the dirt for the next 2 turns. I proceed to try to grab as many points as I possibly can, and it ended 65 to 100. So congratulations, Josh, for an excellent game played. Hope to play you in the future. In fact, Josh and I got on so well that we traded phone numbers. So he lives in Hawaii. He doesn't get to play physically very often, but he says he plays on TTS a lot, so you might see us. Maybe I'll stream it. So things I could have done better in that game is, and I'll put up some photos here, but just by rotating a single piece of terrain, maybe 20 degrees in my deployment zone would have given his drop pods exactly no shots into that, and I would have been able to hold it, and I would have had more units, and it wouldn't have been knocked on my ass so easily. I did not do that. So that's a player optimized terrain problem mixed with a deployment problem. And as we have been learning, as I'm giving you guys these recaps, I'm not very good at deployment. And I should have either committed to killing his character Dreadnought or committed to a flank more heavily. Instead, I was trying to be cheeky. I was trying to keep him out of Oaths of Moment, and I could have played better. With game 4 finished, Josh's phone number in my pocket, and a hearty handshake to him for a game well done, I got my pairing for round 5, and I almost had a heart attack when I saw I was playing Tyranids, but not Crusher Stampede. 18 Hive Guard. So I had a game plan already. I knew that I had to do everything I possibly could to get angles on those Hive Guard and shut down his super optimal shooting. I head to my table and I meet a very nice man who is very hungover, and he says he's just here to have a great time. So we talk about how we're gonna play. We're playing to intent. We both agree to basically unlimited takesy backsies, and I already know this is gonna be a great game whether I lose or not. It was Battle Lines, which is probably one of the Grey Knight's worst maps, at least for my list. I took Purifying Ritual, Engage, and Retrieve Octarius data. I did something a little goofy this time. Well, not goofy, but I tried to change up my Deep Strike game a bit. I put 3 units of Interceptors and my blue Grandmaster Dread Knight into Deep Strike because I wanted him to have to fan out to stop me from getting angles on his Hive Guard. His list was 2 units of 12 Gene Stealers, 1 unit of 10 Gaunts, 1 unit of 28 Gaunts, a Swarm Lord, a Tyranid Prime, like the aforementioned 18 Hive Guard. He had a Lictor to do Rod, he had a Neurothrope, 2 units of Warriors, and that's it. So I already know he doesn't have very many bodies, not as many as he'd like, and that I can probably do a lot of Shunt and Gate, if I had it, play. So I put a lot of things into Deep Strike, as I mentioned, and he only put the Lictor and the large blob of Gaunts into strategic reserves. So we roll off. I got first, which actually wasn't that bad. It let me do some play. So he had, he's just got so many Hive Guard and not enough obscuring terrain. He left some of them hanging out on one corner. So I shunted up one of the Dread Knight to try to go ahead and pick off of his Hive Guards. Or otherwise, I just kind of spread out. I move around. I'm trying to grab objectives. I move up 1 unit of Interceptors onto the middle objectives, and I have another unit going towards the topmost objective. I then shoot, and I use a CP to extend the range, and I cast the +1 to wound. It doesn't go off, even with a reroll. I shoot a whole bunch, and I only managed to kill like 2 of the Hive Guard, maybe 3. So that wasn't a great trade. His turn 1, he goes away and he blows away that Dread Knight, and he blows away the Interceptor squad that I put on that topmost objective, which does not leave me in a good spot. He moves up his Gene Stealers on the bottom of objective, 1 unit of them, and he's not in charge range, but that bottom objective in later turns into this hilarious brawl. So my turn 2, here's a photo of after turn 2 movements. Sorry I didn't take any photos of deployment, and I didn't take any other photos of this game at all. But as you can see, I've spread out. I'm trying to deny the Lictor coming in for Rod. I've in the left-hand side, I have some Servitors trying to rush over to where the bottom Dread Knight is there to raise banners. I drop down with my blue Grandmaster. I surround him with Interceptors to go ahead and stop a charge. You can see he has both of his units of Gene Stealers down there trying to come take that objective. The terrain on this that is listed as these little billboards, those were dense. So if you shot through them or you were touching them, you were considered to be in dense. So he has put his Gene Stealers in dense terrain. At this point, I shot with my Dread Knights. I managed to get some more wounds or kill a couple more Hive Guard on the right side there. And then on his objective had been a unit of Warriors. I shot them off. So my goal is I'm leaving him with a big fat 0 for primary for his turn 2, which I did. You can see that I put in Pyrrhic Amplification on it as well, and I shot at it. I got it down to 2 wounds. You can see on this photo here, this is after the shooting phase. I think it's before the charge phase. And you can see what the board state is like. I try to charge with these Interceptors. It does not happen, and there we are. I kept 2 more units of Interceptors in Deep Strike after this. I only came down with the 1 Dread Knight and the 1 unit of Interceptors. His turn 2, he moves some more Warriors up onto his objective to secure it. He tries to cast a bunch of powers. I deny every single one of them. He then moves his Gaunts up so he can get an easy charge onto my Dread Knight down at the bottom. He shoots at my Dread Knight at the top. He splits fire. He doesn't put enough rounds into the Dreadnought at the top. It stays alive with 1 wound. So I'm still holding that objective at the top, which he did not want. He then, I believe he kills with the other Hive Guard, my other remaining Grandmaster Dread Knight. Then he charges into the Dread Knight down at the bottom, and he proceeds to not kill it either, although he now holds the objective. So on my turn 3, I score 10 for primary. I go ahead and I move my Dread Knight at the top objective to get some shots onto his Hive Guard, which then I deep strike in another unit of interceptors directly onto that top objective, so I'm still holding it. This is where I had also on this turn switched to the Tide of Celerity, which I had actually almost never used before. I was trying to hope to get these charges off. I fall back with my interceptors. My Grandmaster Dread Knight in shooting just blows away the Tyranid Prime. My interceptors do charge into the Gene Stealers and kill all but 1. Now, I didn't realize, this is a mistake I made. I didn't realize Gene Stealers weren't Synapse. I thought they were Fearless. So I didn't ask for a morale check, but that dude had lost every single one of his mates in that following shooting and combat phase. So he ended up being a hero Gene Stealer, which is pretty funny, and it's okay. Like, we both made that mistake. We're both starting to feel it. Like, this is the bottom of game 5 out of 6 games over 2 days. I don't know how some of these guys did 10 games. He scores 10 for his turn 3. He brings his gaunts in from strategic reserves. They're a big horrible mess. They shoot at and kill that 1 wound Dread Knight. They also manage to kill most of the interceptors on that objective. He brings in his Lictor into my far back corner. Rod's there, so now he's rotted in 3 out of the 4 corners. Anyway, at this point, like, I've got interceptors on his objective. I'm not gonna go into too much here, but here's where the game starts to really steamroll in my direction. So his Tyranids Prime is dead. He's only got 1 Gene Stealer left. His 10-man of Gaunts I killed like turn 1. He has no warriors left. I'd managed to shoot out most of his Hive Guard. So there's still 3 units of Hive Guard, but they're like a 2-man, a 4-man, and a 3-man. So he's putting buffs on them, and they're not anywhere near as efficient as they would usually be. I drop in my last unit of interceptors. They get off a charge, and they pulverize his Hive Guard in his backfield. And at the end of that, I believe that was turn 4. At the end of turn 4, he concedes, and we just talk it out. Meanwhile, his hilarious little Gene Stealer is running around and gets him his last rod. My strike squad runs up and just schwacks that Lictor. And that was it. That was the end of the game. Mike was a hilarious dude. He was very nice. We're both like just so exhausted by this time. My like shoulders are starting to hurt from being hunched over everything for so long. He's still hungover from the night prior. So we call it. The game ends 81-55 in my favor, which I was actually very surprised about because I had not thought I'd done that well. I was just trying to play the missions. I was trying to get engaged. I was trying to mess with his Hive Guard, and I was trying to stand on primary. That was my whole game plan, which apparently actually worked out. At this point, my goal was shattered. I originally wanted to win 2, lose 4, but now I'm 3-2, so I'm already ecstatic. Go into my round 6. I meet a very nice man named Matt, and as we are setting up, he lets me know that his Custodes list is a meme list. So he is playing the Emissaries Imperatus. I don't even remember what that does. He has a Land Raider. He's got a massively buffed up captain on bike with like a relic and multiple warlord traits. He brought Trajan Valoris. He's got 3 units of Custodian Guard, 2 with shields, 1 with spears. He has a Achilles Dreadnought. He has some 6 Virtus Praetors, that's the jet bikes, and he also has a Palace Grav Attack, which I didn't know what it was. Still don't know what it is. I want to just preface this. I am so exhausted by this point. I've spent the last about 30 minutes trying to give you a good recap about how this game went, and I just can't even really remember. I'm going to give you the fast version of the recap. This mission is the Scouring, so 5 objectives. This is probably my least favorite map in the 2021 mission pack. I took Purifying Ritual, Stranglehold, and Engage. I used the same strategy for Deep Strike that I did in my last game, so I put 3 units of Interceptors in Deep Strike along with my blue Grandmaster Dread Knight from the Prescient Brethren. He took Abhor the Witch, grind them down, and there's a Custodian specific secondary now called Stand Vigil, which is effectively Stranglehold but easier to score. If I remember right, all they have to do is they get to score 3 points if they hold more objectives in no man's land than the enemy does. Turn 1, he wins, he goes first. He's able to pre-game move his Praetors up like 9 inches, and then he gets to move them 14, and then he gets to advance and charge them or something. They get right into my Dread Knight castle. They shoot a bunch of salvo launchers. I make a bunch of saves. They get in there. Combat happens. I kill 1 or 2. Brings up his Land Raider. It kills one of my Dread Knights. My turn 1, I'm on the back foot now. I'm just trying to get him out of my deployment zone. There's nothing I can really do about it. His guys are so tough. They resist a lot of my psychic. He's able to just flat out deny 1. Just unmovable. He's hard to kill. I kill a couple more bikes, but I leave 1 up. His turn 2 brings down his Dread Knight, or his Dreadnought in my backfield. Brings up his shield captain on bike. Gets some shooting off. Anyway, he sticks me back in my deployment zone. There's nothing I can really do. I'm holding 2 at this point. He's holding 3. He's done a very good job of screening out his backfield, so I can't drop anywhere. He gets out with Trajan and the Custodian Guard squad and the Blade Wizard, and he moves towards my Interceptors and Servitors on the bottom objective. My turn 2, I drop down with my Grandmaster and a unit of Interceptors to try to shore up that bottom objective. I then make one of the biggest misplays of the game where in my psychic phase, I spent a whole bunch of CP to go ahead and debuff the Custodian Guard squad on one of his backfield objectives, and then because I'm so exhausted, I don't even shoot at them. I shot at the Land Raider. I don't know why. He manages to charge me with Trajan, and the Blade Wizard knock my Interceptors off of the objective. Shooting phase, I'm able to severely wound the Dreadnought that he dropped down. I then charge it and kill it in melee with my hammer. Grandmaster, I countercharge into the Blade Wizard, not Trajan, with one of my Interceptor squads, and I manage to drop him a couple of wounds, but he's very tanky, hard to kill. I think even pop transhuman on him. He swings back, kills all of my Interceptors, moves up with his Consolidate and pile in towards my objective. The rest of the game is just me making horrible mistakes and him capitalizing on them. This is the only time I've ever done 6 games in a row in 2 days before, so I'm absolutely mentally at my wit's end. I have not eaten this whole day. I've had a couple of cups of coffee and maybe a beer or 2, and that's the extent of the calories rushing through my body. At one point, I think it was turn 3, I moved all of my guys around, I set some stuff up, and then I just started shooting. And my opponent laughed, and he's like, "You can finish shooting here, but you might want to go back and do your psychic phase." Like, I was so exhausted, I completely forgot to even do that. Anyway, he wins handily, 94-36. Purifying Ritual, I mean, the Scouring's really difficult. You have only 5 objectives. I was stuck in my deployment zone most of the game. I managed to kill his bike captain. I managed to kill his land raider. I managed to kill a unit of custodian guard. But he's just, Trajan is like unstoppable. The blade wizard is just murderous. Being able to use transhuman for 1 CP on units that tough is just incredible. I sure wish we had cheap transhuman, but we don't. So I never used transhuman once the entire tournament, actually. So that's it. That was turn 6. Matt was a nice guy. I was just absolutely bonkers tired. I was misplaying everything. At one point, I was making 0 of my 4-up invols on my Dread Knights, which we were both laughing about, because what are you going to do? That's the way the dice roll. So, but anyway, thus ends my LVO games and my recaps as far as I can remember. Moving into my thoughts on my placement. So I'm now 3-3. As I said earlier, my goal was to go 2 and 4. And if I did that, if I went 2 and 4, I knew that I was going to be very happy. So I'm absolutely ecstatic. I will not hesitate to point out that all 3 of the games I won were against 8th edition codexes. So by the middle of this year, everybody should have their 9th edition codexes, and I think things will be a lot different for, like, into my demons opponent, definitely into my Tau opponent, and then into my Nids opponent as well. You'll also notice I dodged Drukhari entirely. I dodged Crusher, Stampede, and I only played 1 Custodes player at the end, and he was not bringing the meta list, especially against Grey Knights, the ones that have the 4-up Feel No Pain to Mortal Wounds. I realized I got a little lucky in my matchups. I also realized I was super tired, and I need to take steps in the future to make sure that I am properly fed throughout the entire event. I did have a water bottle with me the whole time. I drank water like crazy. It wasn't just beer. That was mainly in the evenings. Next year, if I go, I would love to go 4 and 2. I might even bring my Death Watch. Not because I hate my Grey Knights. I love my Grey Knights. I've been just focused on my Grey Knights since basically August, now that I want to start playing with the Army of Renown from Death Watch more. And I really need to work on my deployment game. My deployment game lost me at least the Iron Hands game straight up, and it made other games more difficult. So I need to not be handicapping myself before the game even starts. I just want to give you some closing thoughts about LVO as a whole. Now, the first point I want to discuss is about everybody's attitude. I've had a lot of people message me on Discord, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, asking me like, hey, what was the field of players like? How were their personalities? And I gotta tell you, it was awesome. Everybody was super nice. There were some miscommunications in a couple of my matches, but you know, we just pushed on like human beings. Everything was great. I've exchanged numbers with a couple of these players. Folks were buying drinks for one another. Everybody was keeping their masks on. There were no dickbags that were arguing about this rule or that rule or anything like that. So if you are not going to tournaments because you are worried that there are people there who are bastards, I wouldn't worry about that. Not that I'm the most experienced tournament player ever, but the 2 I've gone to now, including the LVO, were fantastic in terms of everybody that I interacted with. I do want to point out as well, like, LVO is an excellent opportunity to meet all these people that you see on YouTube or you read about on Goonhammer. I got to meet multiple people I've interviewed on my channel, including Matthew Green, Ben Sherwin. I walked right up to Stephen Box and I introduced myself, telling about how I've had Jake and Michael on the show. He was very nice. I talked to Adrian and Zach at the Tabletop Titans Tabletop Terrain booth. I interfaced with most of the Art of War team, including Mark Perry and Brad Chester and Nick Nanavati and Richard Siegler. Everybody was fantastic. I went out to dinner with most of those guys. They were just sportsmen through and through, excellent guys, very funny. Of course, I spent a lot of time hanging out with my friends Norm, who came with me from the Portland area, and then also Ken and Biggs, who's both been on the show numerous times and is a pal of mine. I also partied with the whole last Blade crew and hung out with them all Sunday while they were having their games. So that's Stefan and Graham and Torin and Matt and John. I spent a lot of time with those guys. During my tournament match, I even had somebody walk up who recognized me and said that they watched this very channel. So if you're still here, if you're still listening, I wanted to talk to you, man, but I was really busy playing my game. So thanks for swinging by, though. Like, that's really cool to meet like my actual viewers. And then just a note about Las Vegas in general. If you've never been there, I have family that lives down there, so I've been there quite a bit. But if you're ever down there, just remember it is a city that exists to separate you from your money. So do your research, look at where you want to go. Big tip from me, don't spend a lot of time on the strip. Like, you have to go there if you've never been there because it's Las Vegas and stuff, but everything there is very expensive. Like, you're gonna see like $21 mixed drinks. You're gonna see $10 or $12 beers for 1 pint or a 12 ounce. So if you want to save money, go to downtown. It's very nice now. About 10 years ago it was pretty shady, but go there now. The One Last Blade crew and Norm and I, we swung by there one night and we found a bar and we plopped down and we were having $7 32 ounce drinks and excellent banter with all of the bar staff. So like, Vegas is what you make of it. So check it out, experience it, explore it. Vegas is more than just the strip. And with that, thank you so much for sticking through this whole video about my LVO recap. Next year, I want to do a lot more stuff about how I'm training, get videos up, bat reps, all that stuff. I've got a great setup and a cool group of guys who are interested in doing the same thing. So before I sign off, I just want to remind everybody, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'm on Instagram. Down below is a link to my Discord, which is growing, so please join. And don't forget to follow your mother.